Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Zainab Avni. I'm an alignment coach and energy healer. And today I have with me in the studio Casey Stevens. Casey, it's wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Such a pleasure to be with you, Anav. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So let's get started and share with our audience a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I live in the States, a ways away from you in Seattle, Washington, and I have a spiritual psychology practice. And so what that means is that I practice from a holistic perspective, and I like to go a little deeper and, wider in my approach and consider the whole person, the mind, body, spirit, and really, there is sort of a rejection in a way, right, of the pathologizing and all of those things, right, with the Western diagnoses and whatnot. And so I try to just understand what is it that any imbalance is trying to tell us, and on any layer of our being, what I seek to do is try to understand what the imbalance is trying to tell us and how do we put it back into balance. And so that's the work that I do every day
It
with people
sounds
all over the
amazing.
world and in my city. Yes.
Well, it sounds amazing, and of course, it's music to my ears. I also believe in natural healing and understanding really what is the root cause of things is to my experience is so much more rewarding than just going with, hey, here's a pill and let's see where it gets us. But I'm
Indeed.
curious to know a little bit about you. So how did you decide that this is the thing that you wanted to do every day?
Yeah. Well, I came the honest way through needing this work myself at a certain point in my life, back when I was sort of in a dark descent, in the, depths of my own kind of pain and healing journey. And I just started seeking answers like many of us do. And how do I get out of this pain? And why are these struggles and patterns showing up in my life? And who am I? And, all of those things that I really hadn't examined or questioned in a conscious or meaningful way before that time. And so, there was lots about that with my story that I was going through, which happy to share anytime about that. And bottom line, I found myself seeking. I found myself looking to understand myself better, understand my patterns, understand the pain and suffering that I was in, whether that was emotional, physical, all of them, right? Because they can start to overlap and intersect. And so that's what I did. And then eventually, because everything in my life was crumbling at that time, and really it was kind of like a rebirth and a fresh start of my old identity, and my ego and all of that was just dying away. And so I was trying to discover a new path. And so eventually my own transformation, and it's so empowering, right? When you have these positive experiences with your own healing, that it's like, wow, I want to help people do this. And so then I shifted from just kind of doing this interpersonal work and just learning about it for myself, for my own healing, to really wanting to help other people, as many of us healers end up doing. Wanting to help other people heal in their own way, but applying my own kind of medicine and magic to that, through, not only my education, but also my experience. I think there's something really juicy that we end up having to offer once we've gone through those kind of that post-traumatic growth experience. And for me, that was recognizing that this is the work I wanted to do in the world, and that I wanted to do it in a unique way. I didn't want to be just Western. I didn't want to be just woo woo, right? I wanted to combine those two things, and it felt more comprehensive in a way that I could help other people heal. So here I've been doing it for almost 15 years, and I love it, and it is absolutely my life's passion, and what I love to do, and feel like I've gotten pretty good at doing at this point in my life. So
That's always, of course, a bonus.
yeah.
But I am curious, what made you make this decision that actually you were not settling for whatever it is that you were going through? I mean, we hear so many people, right, that they've been diagnosed with so many different things, and but they stay in that realm of actually there is no cure, or there are no known cases of recovery or something like that. and yet here you are saying that wasn't good enough. Basically, I wanted something else for me. How
Yeah.
did that come about?
Well, I mean, honestly, it was a surprise to me because I hadn't been. I mean, I think it's a great question. Thank you for asking that. But it was a surprise to me because I really had not, I mean, until this juncture, which for me was in my 20s, it was in my first marriage, it was in everything to do with kind of that and my relational framework and how I related to my relational framework. That was where a lot of my pain body lived. Which then, of course, translates to the different layers of your being and lives in your body and all the places, right? So, but for me, I really hadn't been in a place in my life before where I even knew what my orientation around that would be. But what I did learn about myself at that time is I just had a deep desire to understand myself, which I wouldn't have known if I wasn't in that position because so many people do so many different things with that. And that can be based on our nervous system and so many different but some of it's just your values. And what I really learned about my values at that time was that I was truly a deep seeker, and that when a problem arises that really, isn't just a simple fix, but it's like, whoa, this is a big deal, right? I have to decide who I am in this moment. And what I learned about who I was in that moment was that I was a seeker, and that when there's a problem, what I do with that is I'm like deeply curious. I become all consumed. I go all in and I want to understand it and I want to transform it. And at that time was really the first time I really been faced with needing to discover that about myself. So I hope I'm answering your question, but it really, again, it was kind of a surprise because you kind of don't know what you don't know about yourself until you know it. And so when I was in that situation, it was clear to me, and I had other choices I could have made. I could have become a victim. I could have gone down many different paths. And what I recognized is I just really had a strong fight inside of me. I had a really strong desire inside of me to turn things right side up. And I didn't want to just do it in a superficial way. For me, what I realized is like, whoa, like when I cracked that open, the exploration and the discovery of myself was vast and wide and deep. And I really met that challenge wholeheartedly. And I honestly had no idea that that's who I was. Or how I would organize around a problem, but it's a beautiful thing because it really helped me. I think we can kind of succumb to that, right? And like surrender to a victim consciousness anytime there's something really hard or challenging going on, or we have this inside of us that we really just kind of seek wise solutions. And that's what I learned about myself is, and I didn't just do it a little bit, I did it like to the full extent. And so that was just an interesting like discovery about myself. But what I've learned as other challenges have happened along the way for me, is that's actually how I call it organize. I organize myself. It's who I am. And so it's my nature that really wants to be coherent in that way where I'm really kind of seeking deep solutions. And so that's how I really kind of discovered it. And then I almost couldn't stop myself from doing it. It was like there was no helping that that's who I was and that's how I was going to approach things. And really nothing else was as important to me. And what I've learned, because I talk about values with people all the time, is it's just a very, very high value of mine. I am somebody who, in any given situation, I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it my best, but I don't just want to do it on the surface. I'm going to do it pretty deep. And so, that kind of inner exploration of the psyche, of meaning in life, of kind of these deeper existential and esoteric things that are more ephemeral in quality. What I know is that I value those so much and I really am passionate about it and I go in deep. So I hope that's answering your question, but really it's just like it wasn't even that I really decided. I couldn't help myself but be organized in this way. And which really helps me because as doing this work as a healer, as I'm sure you know, it makes me deeply curious and passionate about helping other people in that way. And so I'm all in on it. I'm just like all in. And that's how I show up with people. And because I want them to have exactly that same, I know it's possible for them in their healing path. And if you invest, which is not the easy thing to do, but when you really invest in it wholeheartedly, who you can become on the other side of that is just, the most exalted version of yourself. And why wouldn't we choose that? So, yeah.
Right. Yes. No, thank you for all of that. But I guess I have a couple of questions. So
Sure.
first of all, who helped you on your path? Who or what modalities or what was there for you at the beginning of your journey so that, you picked up on that and then you saw these results. What was that like?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'll say many, many, many people have helped me on my path. But initially, when I first started sort of in that dark period that for me happened to be in my first marriage and was relational again in that nature. And for me, that was also, excuse me, my husband at the time was really struggling with some real severe mental health things. And which meant that then I was really struggling with those. And so, what who I sought out, which really was kind of this beautiful gift, was she was a therapist, and yet she kind of practiced in this witchy way. She was very intuitive. She had a lot of holistic gifts. She was kind of had her own medicine and magic, and yet she was a therapist, which was really great because what I've also recognized about myself is that I have both parts to me. I can be very spiritual and mystical in this way, and I'm also really practical and grounded and logical. And so I want things to make sense and I want to explore the science and I want to understand patterns. And that's really also something that, again, is just kind of my balance inside of me that I couldn't just explore it if it were just one or the other. The combination is really what's valuable. And so I was so fortunate. And I think it's no coincidence. I think, the perfect people appear and it's just our job to listen to, you know, how does that feel to be in their presence and what do they offer and how can I soften in that container with them. And so she was perfect because I happened to seek her out and I don't even know that I knew that I needed that combination of things, but I found her and she was really the first person that I found. And then she became really kind of my initiation point. So she helped me through that time in my life. And then she also kind of helped me with this self-discovery. And at the same time, I was really kind of having a spiritual awakening of sorts. And so then I started to seek out other things and other people. And she still was kind of like a home base for me. But then I decided to go back to school and become a therapist at the time, which was a beautiful kind of aha moment that I had in her office with her after probably a year of working together or more. I really realized I want to do this as my life's work. And so I said, I think I want to do what you do. And she said to me, I've just been waiting. I mean, it will be a moment I'll never forget in my life. I've just been waiting for you to say that. And so she could already kind of see that in me for lots of reasons. And then she actually helped me to, apply to, grad school and do all of those things, which was beautiful. So she was like a wonderful support for me at that time. And I was going through a spiritual awakening. And so I just was seeking, again, I was seeking um, at that time when I knew I wanted to start doing this work. It's like, okay, well, I have to learn. There's a lot I need to learn, and there's a lot I need to understand, not just in the clinical framework, but of my spiritual self. So then I would keep seeking other people. And sometimes perhaps they were recommendations from her or things that and I think that's what we do is we really have to listen to what's our own medicine and what's our own magic and what appeals to us. And so I find this when people have spiritual awakenings that they end up, consuming just from, it's like, who is it? And this is, going back more than 15 years now. And so it wasn't, I mean, we're so lucky that we have places like this with you and your podcast and, the internet, and that just wasn't as widely at that time that I was seeking. And so it was really great that I had, I would take classes and I would do, just find mentors that, you just have to find a way to get access to the right people. And then the way I look at it is what you do is you really then absorb as much as you can, and then you use your discernment to identify what really relates the most to you. And so that's what I was doing is I was consuming and lots of stuff didn't resonate with me at all. And So I just kind of, took it for what it was and let it go. And, other people can deal in that way. And then I just really listened to like what speaks to me, what opens me up, what gives me a little bit more guidance or direction so that I can learn how to incorporate this into the way that I walk. Because there was a time that I was doing both. I look back on that time in my life, I'm like, how did I get through that? I don't know how I had the energy for it. It's wild because I was doing so many trainings and every single spare minute that I had, I was learning from somebody who had something to offer. Or I was literally in grad school at the time. So that's kind of how I did it. But she was the origin point for me. And I will say I always had this spiritual self to me, but I was never like this invested. I wasn't this like all in on it. It was something I would dabble with. So I had throughout my life, even before that hard time, I would, go see an astrologer. I mean, I had people like that I would kind of explore, but it
Mhm.
wasn't until I really needed the deep work myself that like it cracked open and I got access to just so many more people. But she was the first, and she was so wonderful because she offered such a vast combination of things as well. And they were different than the magic that I bring, but it was my favorite time that I would spend every week. My life at the time was, just falling apart. Everything was a disaster. Most hours of most days were not great. But when I went in and I saw her, something in me woke up. And I loved that hour that I would spend with her every week. It was so precious and valuable to me. And that told me something about myself. So.
Nice, nice. And so tell me, who are the people that you're working with today, and also what is that extra kind of magic that you bring to the work that you do with them?
You mean my clients? Who do I work with?
Yeah.
hmm Yeah, so I mean, it's been interesting because I think sometimes we don't necessarily choose that either. Like we end up being able to guide and teach through things I think oftentimes that we've struggled with, and so we've become like personally experts at it. So interesting patterns that I've noticed that happen to be people that see me at this juncture. Anyone's welcome to see me, right? But definitely, I do a lot of consciousness stuff. I do a lot of deeper work. Spiritual psychology isn't for everybody. Some people are really wanting to seek out the just very traditional framework of therapy. That is not what I do. And so what I do is very different. That's a piece of what I have to offer because I can't separate myself from that education and that understanding. But who I tend to work with are people going through spiritual awakenings. I work with a lot of, and this is just by happenstance patterns that I've noticed over time. So anyone can see me, and there's always, exceptions to these rules. But in general, what I've found at this point, and after doing this a long time, these are the people that find me. So people going through spiritual awakenings. I work with men and women, and I work with people all over the world. And so it's people who are seeking a different kind of healing. It's usually people who have tried more traditional forms of therapy or they've done kind of everything and then maybe that hasn't worked, or maybe they're looking for something to advance that even more. And so then they'll be the ones to find me. It's like kind of like, I won't say the last stop, because I don't think our work ever ends, but it's like, okay, they've tried everything and they're wanting something more vast or something more expansive that isn't kind of your run-of-the-mill therapy.
Mhm.
So those are people who seek me out. And then a lot of Western doctors, actually, doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, like therapists, a lot of people in that realm who have the clinical training, but they don't know, they know there's something more, or they might kind of have a private secret self that is, um, you know, wanting to explore how to work with people in a more comprehensive way because they understand that there's limitations to the system. And so they're wanting to figure out how to incorporate that into their work so that they can also feel more meaning and purpose because usually they're kind of feeling some sense of um, lack in their life. They're not aligned with their work anymore, and they're wondering, how do I make something of this education that I've invested heavily in, by the way? And so how do I utilize that, but then also be true to myself and have more meaning in my work. And so that's a huge subsect of people that happen to find me is just how do I figure out how to walk this way when I'm bridging these two worlds of science and spirit. So I do a lot of mentorship around that. And then finally, I would say the last kind of group of people that I really work a lot is honestly like very highly successful I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think again, I know I have that in my field. So it's a lot of people who have been kind of exceptional in business. They might be executives or CEOs or business owners on a really high scale, and they're looking for, and so they've done it all. And they really have kind of accomplished everything, but their spiritual self or their relational self excuse me, is unfulfilled. And so they're like, okay, well, I have all the money in the world. I have, all the success. I know how to be great in business, but I'm not satisfied. I'm not happy, or my relationships aren't happy. And so how do I make that part of my life? Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm trying not to cough. How do I make that part of my life really meaningful and fulfilling? And really, that's what's next for me. I can buy anything, I can do anything, whatever, but I want to be fulfilled. I know there's something, to excuse me, feeling more alive in my life. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
And um, so those people find me. And then I would also say, kind of in that same group of people, I end up working with couples who don't just want an average relationship because I'm a marriage and family therapist, right? So I'm trained to work with systems and couples and family systems. But I see a lot of couples too where there's some disconnect and people are wanting a more conscious, and that's also been part of my journey, right? It's like, how do we find a more conscious relationship? We want to be so deeply connected. We want this bond to be so sacred and special. And so, how do we do that? And again, these are all just kind of areas of expertise that I personally, um, I don't know, mastered perhaps, but I think we're always in the self mastery of that. But they're areas that have, I have worked in, and so those, people also seek me. So that I would say, I know it's kind of a random little spattering, but those are the people that come typically, and there can always be an outlier to that, but typically people that are seeking more consciousness, true healing, true transformation that hasn't maybe worked other places, and really kind of like relational gold. That's what people are looking for, and so those are the people that tend to find me.
And so what, because what you're describing a lot, what you were describing, I guess a lot of that would also be true for the traditional therapy. So what is that magic that you bring that people don't
Yeah.
usually find in that conventional therapy?
Yeah, well, I would say it's really, I mean, it's ephemeral in some ways, right? It's kind of like intangible in a way, but I think it's a higher perspective, right? I mean, a lot of people see the world kind of through their own perception, and that can be limited. So I would say it's just a greater consciousness. Like I am big about consciousness and really understanding and seeing ourselves clearly and getting out of our perception and into our perspective. And so a lot of it's mindset stuff. A lot of it is kind of deep, like quantum type healing that we'll go in and do. And so, whatever layer of the being, it can be past life stuff. It can be, um, again, it's this blending of science and spirit. And so, you're not just getting the scientific part that, okay, here's the modalities and we're going to do that. I run all of that through my own magic, which is also just my intuition. So I had a spiritual awakening. I have a really, profound relationship with my own kind of intuition and how that works in my world, and then how I also can help people to tap into their own intuition. And so I have, kind of speaking about that too, is, I know I kind of inferred that with people having spiritual awakenings, but I really help people learn to know themselves deeply and to listen to their intuition because that's something that I have learned how to do in my life. And again, I'm always fascinated because I think that intuition comes through for each of us in different ways. And it's just really how do you listen to the messages and trust them and feel more confident to live in that way. And so that's a lot of what I do too. And so I use my intuition. And for me, how that comes through is again my own unique way that I experience that. But it is, I'm very clear cognizant, I'm very clear sentient. Those are my primary. So it's like when I'm meeting with somebody, what I end up feeling is I'm getting this psychic impression of you and all and everything that's going on with you and anything that's blocked or any way that you're suffering when we meet. There's a container and I can feel it. I can literally start to feel it inside myself as we're meeting, or sometimes it happens before we meet. Sometimes it happens right when you book a session. Sometimes it happens that morning. But I start to get these kind of psychic impressions, and it's not necessarily, I mean, sometimes I'll know ahead of time like who that's connected to or what is coming through, and then sometimes I won't know until I've met with somebody. Oh, that's why I was feeling. Oh, that's why that information was coming through. It's connected to you, and this is what it is. And so then that's beautiful and different than, maybe some people, because then I can help guide people based on what data I have, because I'm a more objective observer. And so I can help you kind of get outside of yourself, have more perspective, as I mentioned, and understand what might be happening, and then what strings do we need to pull in order to organize your system in a more coherent way so that have more freedom around whatever is causing you suffering. And so I would say that's also different. And so then for me, again, that it's kind of kinesthetic. I feel it. I just know it. Things will drop in. I'll just get, images, and then the whole picture starts to build. And then I can, again, guide you in a more engaged way, I suppose, because, I'm not just a, neutral person sitting across from you. I'm engaging with the energy on a deeper level. And so then I can help bring people through that in a way. So that's what happens. And a lot of that can even happen as I'll start to get data. And for me, it's like kind of confirmation that I'll get like literally, I'll start kind of yawning or burping or hiccuping or coughing or things like that. And it just kind of tells me that we're moving the energy for you. And so that's just the unique way that it comes through for me. And then also is kind of like, so sessions can kind of look interesting and weird because I might just be like, having kind of all of this stuff moving through me physically. And you'll sense it even a little bit kind of, with kind of the coughing, or you can kind of sense sometimes things get caught and it's like, well, because I'm tapping into some energy and I'm just kind of moving through it. And so that's how it works. And it's, I mean, I didn't train for that. I didn't study. What I've learned is just how my system works and how I interpret the meaning. And then I always want you, right? I don't want to just, I'm not here to heal you. I'm facilitating the container so that you can heal yourself. And so that's just the confirmation that I have in my system that lets me know we're on the right track, we're moving things, this is working. And then people can feel that, right? I'm not just saying it to them, they can feel it. And sometimes they'll end up having those experiences, or they'll be able to acknowledge because they're just having all these awarenesses or awakenings or aha moments or shifts that are happening that can be big or small, but the work is deeper because we're working in that way. So that's, I would say, in a nutshell, although there's much more I could say about that, because no two sessions I have are ever alike. I never know what I'm going to walk into. I don't prepare for my sessions. I just show up and I really create the container so that whatever is meant to unfold is very organic, and that's kind of how we do it. And whatever is needed by that person, it's like I'm tracking, I call it tracking the energy. I'm tracking your energy throughout the session, and then just facilitating whatever wants to unfold in that particular session. I'm just allowing that to unfold. And for some people, that might be more psychoeducational or more consciousness coaching. And for some people, it's more quantum and energy shifting and subconscious. And, we're working with all of those realms. Sometimes it's past lives, sometimes it's, childhood stuff. I mean, it could be anything. And I just show up and I'm like, whatever comes through is what's meant to come through. And then, people go along for the ride, and it usually ends up in a pretty good place. So, yeah.
It sounds good. Sounds good. So I guess one just last question for today, because and I know we spoke about this before, but one thing
Yes.
that I come across a lot is for people because you spoke about the intuition, and they say my negative voice really is my intuition. They really believe that this voice that tells them not to do something is actually the voice of intuition. And
Yeah,
then, of course, they're very grateful for that intuition, and then they're not really sure why they still feel so stuck. So how
stuck.
do
Yeah.
you help people to recognize that the intuition is actually part of the soul and the things that are in their alignment, rather than the things that is, fear-based and actually trying to stop them from getting into that life that they're meant to live?
Yeah, great question. And I know you do this work too. See, here it comes. I know you do this work too, and so you know this all too well, but it really is learning to discern the difference because there is a very, very distinct difference, and yet it seems subtle. But it's actually a very distinct difference. Yeah, like your intuition is never going to be fear-based. Your intuition is never going to be anxious. It's not going to be emotional even, right? It's just going to be very peaceful and calm. And so it's really learning to notice the difference between kind of an inner critic or a protective part or something that sounds more fearful and urgent or panicked or any of those things. It's really learning to listen to the difference. And so if that voice is coming through and telling you don't do that, or it's a strong inner critic, or it's again a protective part, because I'm also trained in IFS. And so it's really understand that system is really a brilliant system if you kind of just as a reference point, right? It's like, okay, well, we're all made up of parts. And so it's learning to listen to, well, what part of me is saying that? Is it the part that is my true wise intuition, or is it a protective part? And if it's a protective part, well, then it's probably actually not my highest self. It's just operating on a compensatory strategy that thinks it's helping me, but it's actually not that useful at all at this point. It was useful at a certain time. It's no longer useful. And so again, it's really learning to discern and differentiate when what voice is coming through.
Mm.
And in my experience, intuition is never, it might protect you from some things, right? But it's actually kind of like, I don't know, like it's impartial in a way. It will just kind of show up and it's soft and it's gentle and it's patient and it's kind and it's never negative and it never is fearful and it's never frantic and it's never any of those things. It's just consistent. It's just like it might just come through like a whisper and it's not urgent and it's also not ever going to be uh what's the word I want to look for? It's like it's never going to be aggressive, but that's not even the word I want to look for. It's like it's kind of just impartial, right? I mean, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you this information. Okay, I'll give you the information again, but it's not desperate in any way, right? It's not ever going to be just locked into its agenda. It will be consistent, but it's just kind of like, all right, take it or leave it, you know. And it's always going to be calm, and it's not going to be emotional. It's going to be neutral in that way. That it might be very clear, right? It might be giving you very clear guidance, but it's not going to be panicked, right? You got to listen to me and do this right now. You know, it's not desperate in that way for you to listen. And so it's harder sometimes to discern that because this other voice that might be a protective part, that might be a fearful part, that might be
Yeah.
kind of a subconscious saboteur is going to be more aggressive. It's going to be more like loud. It's going to feel like emotions are associated with it. And your intuition just won't be that way. It's going to feel much more calm. And so it's learning to listen, and it's easier to hear this louder thing over here. It's easier to hear this like more frantic thing, but our intuition won't ever be fearful. It might say, oh, hey, like, wow, you need to watch out or don't go over there, but it wouldn't put you into fear even. It would just be like a knowing, like, I don't know why I need to turn here. I don't know why I'm just getting this really strong nudge, and I'm going to listen to it. And so I think, I mean, that's kind of, an oversimplification, but anyone who has strong intuition would tell you similar advice.
And I think
It's
it's this is really, that's the point, right? That it's really bringing in this conversation that just question. question. And for me, it's also, of course, the how do you feel in your body? Because if it's your intuition, it's expansion, and if it's your negative voice, it's fear and it's constricting. So
Yeah.
that's a clue. But like you say, yes, you have to learn to listen. That there is not just the one voice. There's actually more than that. And as you say, right, people that are very highly intuitive, they know it already. But he was
Yes.
also talking about the people that are just so used to the negative voice, telling them, feeding them lies, that we're saying, hey, actually,
Yes.
there's more to it than that. Uh,
Totally. And I love that example you give because I mean you're bringing it into the body. It's like, okay, well, how do you listen? It always feels expansive. You are so right about that. And our fear or some protective part always constrains us. And so we're more limited, we're more tight, we're more all of those things. And so physically you can literally feel it in your body if you just slow down and say, wait a minute here, let me pause and like really feel into this. What's the difference? How do I tell the difference in those voices? Literally, if I'm hearing it or if I'm feeling it, it's like it's going to be communicating to you on all layers of your being. Excuse me. And so that is exactly right. And it's really learning to notice. And the other thing that I'll add to that, which I know, but maybe you're listening, it's like so often, I mean, I think we all have an intuition, and some people have a stronger intuition than others, but everybody has intuition that they can listen to. But usually what happens is we have an injury, even highly, and this has happened to me, so I know it so intimately, but I'll see it's like you're highly intuitive and then you betray yourself. You are getting information at some point about something that you didn't listen to, and then it puts you in harm's way, or your life got harder or things got worse because you didn't listen and now you don't trust yourself anymore. And so there's a lot to repairing those intuition injuries for people, especially who are highly intuitive, that you have to spend the time really repairing that so you can get back into your really intuitive self. And so often we have all had experiences with that where our intuition was speaking to us and we ignored it or we misinterpreted it or something happened that then that relationship that we had with our own intuition got damaged or injured. And so we have to repair that so we can learn to listen again. And the path back is actually really simple, but it just takes, more consciousness around that to really repair it and get back into a good place. And I know that was definitely part of my healing journey is repairing my relationship with my intuition because gosh, I was getting messages for a long time. This isn't right. Something's not good. And I ignored them. It wasn't convenient. I wasn't listening. I was doing something else instead because that's what I thought I wanted. And I was letting that other voice in. And so it's really learning to get rock solid in your kind of awareness about that and that relationship you have with your intuition. It's one of the most important relationships we can ever have in our lives, right? Is our intuition and our relationship with that in a positive way. So.
yeah, no, I totally second that.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess it's wonderful to connect with you again and to
Yeah.
hear a little bit more about your methods and your story, and of course how you help people. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Of course, all of your information is going to be in the show notes, so people are welcome to follow you and find you on social media and contact you and all of that. And so for anyone watching, please do subscribe, like, share this with your friends and family because there is really important information that we bring here, and people just need to know about it. So even if one new person hears about this and this has been helpful, then this is exactly what we're here to do. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Casey, and we'll see you around. See you in the next next
We'll see you the
episode.
next time. Yeah. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much.
Thank you.